These women are in their 60s, some in their 70s, and they have hair that most women half their age would trade everything for. Long, thick, and with a shine that no salon treatment seems to replicate. Nobody taught them the latest trend. They have no access to the products lining your bathroom shelf, and they have never once sat in a stylist's chair. Here is what most people believe, that long, healthy hair past 50 is mostly genetics, that without the right products, the right treatments, the right routine, your hair is simply going to thin, break, and give up. But what if the products are part of the problem? Amish women do not use modern shampoo. They do not condition their hair the way we do, and they certainly do not style it with heat. Yet generation after generation, these women grow hair past their waists well into old age. And the reason comes down to 3 specific habits that the rest of us have quietly abandoned. Today, I am going to walk you through each one of them, not theories, not trends, actual practices rooted in generations of tradition that science is only now beginning to catch up to. Let's start with the habit that is going to surprise you the most. Because when I first learned this, my reaction was the same as yours is probably going to be right now. Amish women do not wash their hair every day. Most of them wash it once a week. Some, depending on the community and the season, stretch it even further than that. And when they do wash it, they are not reaching for a bottle of something that smells like tropical fruit. They use a simple bar soap, unscented, minimal ingredients, sometimes homemade with lye and rendered fat, the same recipe their grandmothers used, and then no conditioner. Now, before you close this video, hear me out. Because what they do instead of conditioner is something that the most expensive hair brands in the world are still trying to replicate in a laboratory. They rinse with apple cider vinegar. That is it. Diluted in water, roughly 1 part vinegar to 8 parts water. Poured slowly over the hair after washing, massaged into the scalp, and rinsed out. Some women add a handful of rosemary or nettle to the water first and let it steep like a tea. A few drops of lavender oil if they have it. Simple, old, borderline, ridiculous looking if you have never done it before. But here is what is actually happening when that vinegar rinse hits your hair. Your scalp has a natural pH that sits between 4.5 and 5.5, mildly acidic. That acidity is not a flaw. It is a protective barrier. It keeps the hair cuticle lying flat, which is what makes hair look shiny and feel smooth. It keeps bad bacteria and fungi from taking hold on your scalp. Modern shampoo, even the expensive kind, is typically alkaline. Every time you wash, you are raising the pH of your scalp. The cuticle lifts, the hair becomes rough, porous, dull, and your scalp, stripped of its natural oils, panics. it produces more sebum to compensate. So 2 days later, your hair is already greasy, which tells you it is time to wash again. And the cycle repeats every day, stripping a little more each time. The apple cider vinegar rinse closes that loop. It brings the pH back down. It seals the cuticle. It removes buildup without stripping the natural oils your scalp spent all week producing. And because the scalp is no longer being disrupted every 24 hours, it eventually stops overproducing oil. Your hair learns to regulate itself again, the way it was designed to. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Every woman in this audience is over 45. And you already know that after 50, your hair changes. A 2022 study published in the journal Menopause found that more than half of postmenopausal women experience noticeable hair thinning. More than half. That is not a rare problem. That is almost every woman in the room. Part of the reason is hormonal. Estrogen helps keep hair in its growth phase longer. And when estrogen drops, hair spends more time resting and shedding. That part we cannot change with a shampoo, but the other part, the part that makes a hair shaft brittle, the part that causes breakage and dullness and a scalp that never quite feels balanced. That part is largely a product of what we are putting on our heads every morning. Amish women are not immune to hormonal changes. They age the same way we do. But they are not layering that hormonal shift on top of a daily chemical disruption to their scalp. Their baseline is protected, and that is exactly why at 65 they still have something to show. This is also why Amish women who leave their communities and switch to modern products often report that their hair becomes frizzy and damaged almost immediately. They are not imagining it. The routine they grew up with was actually protecting the very thing that modern routines claim to protect. Now, I want to be honest with you. Transitioning away from daily washing is not comfortable in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Your scalp has been trained to overproduce oil, and it takes time to recalibrate. You will go through a phase where your hair feels heavier than you would like. That phase ends. But I want you to know it is coming, so you do not give up before you see the results. If you want support while you make this transition and a resource that walks you through traditional ancestral approaches to hair and beauty, I have put everything together for you at ancestralbeauty.shop. Everything there is rooted in the same philosophy we are talking about today. The link is in the description below. Now, washing less and rinsing with vinegar is powerful, but it only works as well as the foundation underneath it. And that foundation is the scalp itself. This is where the second habit comes in, and this one has science catching up to it in a way that genuinely surprised me when I first read the research. Amish women oil their scalps regularly, consistently, not as a treatment when something goes wrong, but as a maintenance practice the way you would tend a garden. The scalp is the soil. You do not wait for the soil to dry out and crack before you water it. You feed it week after week, whether it looks like it needs it or not, because healthy hair begins long before you can see it. It begins inside the follicle. The oils they use are simple. Whatever was available rendered animal fat in the older tradition. Plant oils as those became more accessible: castor oil, olive oil, and rosemary, either as a fresh herb steeped into oil or brewed into a rinse from whatever grew in the garden. Let me tell you what each of these actually does, because it is worth understanding. Castor oil is composed of nearly 90% ricinoleic acid, a fatty acid found in almost no other plant oil at that concentration. Ricinoleic acid reduces inflammation in the scalp. It has antimicrobial properties that keep the scalp environment clean without stripping it, and it is thick enough to coat and protect the hair shaft itself, reducing the tiny fractures and protein losses that happen every time hair gets wet and dries, over and over across years of washing. Rosemary is where the research gets genuinely interesting. In 2015, a peer-reviewed clinical trial took 100 people with androgenetic alopecia. That is the genetic pattern of hair thinning that affects both men and women, and divided them into two groups. One group used minoxidil, the pharmaceutical ingredient in Rogaine, one of the most widely prescribed hair loss treatments in the world. The other group used rosemary oil applied directly to the scalp. After 6 months, both groups showed a similar increase in hair count. The rosemary group reported significantly less scalp irritation. One study, yes, and more research is always needed, but the biological mechanism is completely consistent with what we know. Rosemary increases microcirculation in the scalp, bringing more oxygen and more nutrients directly to the follicle. And rosemary also inhibits an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, the same enzyme that converts testosterone into DHT, the compound associated with follicle miniaturization and hair thinning in aging women. They did not know any of this. The Amish women who have been steeping rosemary in oil for 3 generations did not read a clinical trial. They knew it worked because they could see it. And the scalp massage that delivers the oil matters just as much as the oil itself. Researchers in Japan found that 4 minutes of standardized scalp massage per day increased hair shaft diameter after just 24 weeks. not because of a product, because of the mechanical pressure which stretches the cells in the dermal papilla, the structure at the base of each follicle that determines how thick and how strong each hair will grow. 4 minutes, the work of your own hands. That is all. Here is how to bring this into your life practically. Take a small amount of oil, castor oil, olive oil, or a rosemary infused oil if you want to make one at home. By simply warming rosemary sprigs in olive oil and letting them steep overnight, warm it slightly between your palms so it spreads easily, and apply it directly to your scalp in sections. Use your fingertips, not your nails, and massage in slow, deliberate circles across your entire scalp. Spend at least 4 or 5 minutes. Cover your hair with a loose braid or a soft cloth and leave it overnight. In the morning, wash it out with your simple soap and follow with your vinegar rinse. That is the whole sequence. 2 practices done together once a week. No appointment, no ingredient list you need a chemistry degree to understand. What you are doing is feeding the root so that what grows from it has no reason to be weak. Now, both of these habits are working while you are awake and paying attention. But there is a third habit, the quietest one, that works while you sleep. And I genuinely think it is the most underestimated of the 3, because it is the one that nobody talks about. Every night, before an Amish woman goes to sleep, she braids her hair, one loose braid down the back, not tight, not elaborate, a simple plait secured at the end, and then she goes to sleep. That is the whole habit. I know what you are thinking. That sounds too simple to matter. But stay with me for a moment, because the math here is undeniable. Think about what happens to your hair during 8 hours of sleep when it is left loose. It moves against your pillow constantly, over and over, hundreds of times a night without you even realizing it. That friction does something very specific. It roughens the cuticle. The same cuticle you spent the week protecting with your vinegar rinse. It creates tangles. It creates micro tears at the ends of the hair. The oldest, most fragile section of every strand, the part that has been on your head the longest and has the least protection left. Over weeks, over months, over years, those micro tears accumulate, and that accumulation is the difference between hair that retains its length and hair that seems to stay exactly the same, no matter how long you grow it. Hair scientists have a word for this: retention. And they are clear that growing hair is not the hard part. Keeping what grows is. Your hair is always producing at roughly half an inch every month, whether you can see it or not. The question is, how much of that growth survives long enough to become length you can actually see and feel? For women over 50, when the hair shaft is already naturally finer and more prone to breaking at the ends, retention becomes even more critical. You do not have the same margin for error you had at 30. The braid overnight closes that margin. The hair moves as one structure rather than as thousands of individual strands, each pulling against the pillow fabric in a different direction. No tangling, no mechanical stress on the ends. What grew this week stays. There is something else worth noticing here. When an Amish woman braids her hair after oiling her scalp, the braid does something else as well. It contains the oil. It keeps the treatment pressed against the scalp and wrapped inside the strands through the night, without transferring it all to the pillowcase. The oil works longer. The treatment goes further. It is a small detail, but it shows you something important about how these habits were built, not around theory, but around observation. What works and what makes what works work even better. The braid tonight costs you nothing. It takes less than a minute, and every strand you save from breaking overnight is a strand you do not have to wait months to regrow. 3 habits. That is all that separates a woman in her 60s with waist-length hair from the rest of us. Standing in the shampoo aisle, wondering why nothing is working. Wash less. And when you do, rinse with apple cider vinegar instead of reaching for another conditioner. That promises everything and delivers a little. Feed your scalp with oil and the work of your own hands once a week, the evening before wash day. And tonight, before you turn off the light, braid your hair. None of this costs very much. None of it requires a subscription or a salon or a product with a celebrity's name on it. It requires consistency and a willingness to trust something older than the beauty industry. The Amish did not invent these habits because they read the research. They kept them because generation after generation, the results were standing right in front of them. Now they are standing in front of you too.